I had an epiphany about how modern day capitalism, or the type of capitalism that America is celebrated for, wouldn't work, and the concept of it would collapse harder than even communism without some very ugly things taking place behind the scenes to force it to work we observe the way we observe it working now. For those of you who worship modern day capitalism, especially the fairy tale sort that isn't regulated by a tyrannical government, um, the type most hardcore capitalism worshippers pine for, I'm about to burst your bubble in a major way. Most capitalism worshippers are missing a very large and ugly part of the picture when it comes to our reality, because they get their information and points of view from tribe member propagandists like John Stossel. What if I told you that modern day capitalism, in order for it to be sustained, it primarily requires a massive propaganda machine, and it requires brutality against the masses that is almost equivalent to what was done in the Soviet Union, and it also requires a stratified, at least a two-caste society, like you have in India, for example. In capitalism, you have the entrepreneurs and you have the workers. Let's take a simple business, for example, like a car dealership. Here's the basic gist of how we are told a car dealership came to be. One day, a random American who is really hung up on the idea of fulfilling the American dream woke up and decided he wants to be a millionaire, and so he opened up a car dealership by getting a loan from the Jewish bankers. He then hired a bunch of employees to act as salesmen and basically run day-to-day operations of that dealership. Because he is the boss, he set up the operation, therefore he gets the largest chunk of the profit, even if he is not there actually running things. On the surface, the concept all looks fine and dandy. You might say, well, what's wrong with that? He must have been a smart guy. Good for him. Well, let's dig a little deeper and we see how it all falls apart. If we are to believe in the narrative that any random American, totally random, woke up one day and decided to be the boss of a car dealership, one has to ask, what is to stop every single American from waking up one day and deciding on the same thing? What if you are just a lowly wage slave at a factory that builds cars, and you decide you are tired of that job and you want to be the boss? So let's say we all quit our jobs, and we all open auto dealerships. After all, it's the American dream to be an entrepreneur, and we're all entitled to it, right? But do you see the immediate problem? You will have a million auto dealerships, an oversaturation, but no workers to actually manage them, and no workers to build the cars that go into the lots of those dealerships. Because everyone decided to be a millionaire entrepreneur, and everyone abandoned their low-level wage slave job, the entire society has ground to a halt. No one is producing any product. Everyone is simply sitting around acting like a boss, except there is no one to boss around, and there is nothing being built for you to sell, and no one there to buy it. Every one of us has become boss, but we've all become a boss of an empty building, and there isn't even electricity to power the lights, because every wage slave at the power company has quit so they too can be an entrepreneur. At this point, starvation starts setting in, and you all quickly become reduced to hunter-gatherers and gardeners, just so you don't starve. Boom! Just like that, the highly industrialized America has collapsed back into something resembling the frontier during the pioneer days. So if you have true, unrestrained capitalism, how do you prevent this major flaw from occurring? How do you prevent oversaturation so instead of 2 choices or 10 choices, there is a billion choices for everything? Imagine there being a million different incompatible gaming consoles. How would you have enough players on any given platform to play any multiplayer games? And who would design a version of each game for every single console? The oversaturation itself would be capitalism's own destruction. Therefore, it is imperative that there are monopolies put in place. And how do we get monopolies? Well, it's no secret that a certain cabal, a tribe that you can't criticize, runs the world in the form of Freemasonry. And of course, Freemasonry probably has more Gentiles in it than Jews, but it doesn't matter because those Gentiles have to pretty much act like Jews in order to be part of it in any meaningful way. It's no secret now that the stock market and the economy are artificially rigged. It's no secret that Masonry is behind the control of major businesses, such as Google and Amazon and Walmart and McDonald's and all of mass media. At least it's no secret for those with the eyes to see. It's no secret for those who don't just blindly follow the lies of the propaganda machine that is the mainstream media. The world around us has been constructed like a habitat for the Goyim. When you live inside a nation like USA, you're basically in a cattle pen without realizing it. There is a 2-caste society, basically the tribe at the top and everyone else at the bottom. You have the tribe members at the top of every big business, and you almost exclusively have tribe member politicians. Why? Because they are building the world. But you see, they couldn't do this on their own unless they have what is called the worker. And the worker is almost always a Gentile. Like I said, if everyone puts up a Walmart so they can be the boss of a Walmart, who is going to work to actually run the place? And who is going to build the products that go on the shelves? But see, here is where the massive propaganda comes into play, along with a myriad of crimes against humanity, in order to provide a solution to that dilemma. First of all, the propaganda you are sold from the very day you are born is that you are not good enough. You are not good enough to be an entrepreneur. We're told that those Masonic tribe members that set up these businesses are so intelligent, so inventive, so up on another level that most of us could not comprehend it and could never match them. The best we can do is be grateful that these people exist and that they provide jobs for us. Yes, jobs. Your primary aim in life must be to have a job. This is what you're propagandized with. A job. You have to work for these people. You must struggle to make yourself useful to these people and work for them. There is a very famous piece of propaganda written by a Jewess named Ayn Rand called Atlas Shrugged. This piece of propaganda completely ignores the question of the tribe members at the top of everything, so to speak, and ignores the question of this cabal of Masonry or Illuminati or whatever the fuck they call themselves. This gigantic book strokes the ego of capitalism worshippers by basically telling them that we should all lick the feet of these tycoons and entrepreneurs because they are like gods, because they happen to be geniuses beyond mortal levels. Now, let me reiterate, she's a tribe member. And which tribe controls everything from the top down? And isn't it odd that a tribe has set up secret societies for thousands of years across dozens of empires, just happens to be always controlling everything from the top down? Might you say that they basically have a monopoly on all of our lives? But that's the thing. Capitalism, as I have pointed out, would collapse without monopolies. So how do you maintain a monopoly? Well, through the control of government and the artificial manipulation of markets, an artificial manipulation that the media will propagandize us to believe is organic. Who is at the top of government? Who is at the top of the Federal Reserve and the banks? Who is at the top of big business? Who is making our laws? Who controls our educational institutions? Who controls the mass media and entertainment? It's pretty much against the YouTube's community guidelines to honestly answer that question. So how do you create monopolies? With the help of big government, of course. You see, in actuality, government, business, education, news, and entertainment media are all a single unified entity. If you create laws that force people, for example, to obtain expensive permits to open businesses, or require them to pay big money to pass certain classes before they can obtain a permit, something like that helps divide society into a lower and upper caste, doesn't it? What if you increase the cost of living, so there's no way anyone will dare take out a loan to open a business and will instead frantically pursue a job at a Masonic corporation? What about inflicting disaster on people, such as floods with weather warfare technology, or wildfires with directed energy weapons, so as to increase their desperation levels? How about the media always programming you with the idea that you have to have a job, you have to have employment? What about driving people into debt, or basically setting up the economy in such a way that only 4 years of college education can get you a job where you can actually afford a home and a family, and maybe not even then? And then forcing you to spend your entire life in debt, where you have a 30-year mortgage, and you're also paying off 1 or 2 cars that you purchased on credit. How about dumbing down the population by mass immigration of low IQ third world people, and also inflicting brain damage with vaccines, fluoride in the water, and various other toxins in the food and the air, not to mention by way of the pop culture depicted on TV? And thus you create a two-caste society. The billionaires of a certain tribe at the top who own everything and rig everything, but don't do any of the work, and the proletariat masses that are eager to have a job handed to them by these people and be the workers so they can pay their bills, which basically puts all the wages they earn from Freemasonic corporations right back into Freemasonry. But the payoff for all of this, by having the elites and the wage slaves, is that you can enter a store and buy almost any product you want. Stuff you could never build yourself, like a computer or a television. But at the same time, this means that capitalism becomes nothing more than a softer form of communism. And like I pointed out, it requires a two-caste society where the lower caste, the worker caste, must be not only a victim of brainwashing that makes their enslavement situation seem normal and natural and actually appear like some sort of freedom, but they also have to be victimized by what can only be labeled as crimes against humanity. In communism, they don't pay you to work, and you know that you are enslaved. In capitalism, as it is now, they only pay you the bare minimum so you don't revolt, and they propagandize you that you are free. If we kill such a system, we can say goodbye to the industrialized society as we know it. We'll quickly descend back into living in log cabins and growing our own food just to stay alive, and things will start to look like the 15th century. If you're gonna want to play a video game or something, tough shit. There will be no one there to make a video game, or any of the devices that project a video game, unless you can build your own gaming console and a television set from scratch. But most people don't even know how to grow their own food from scratch. Because I'm aware of how this world truly runs, it pisses me off that I'm expected to get a job when people who are born into the tribe's secret societies, or join them and lick that tribe's ass, they simply get made into bosses of businesses where they don't have to do any of the work and keep all the millions in profit. So how do you solve this problem? How to have an industrialized society that runs without slavery, without a need to propagandize the enslaved masses that they are free, where everyone lives comfortably? Communism isn't the answer, but the so-called rigged capitalism we have now with a two-caste society is not right either. How do we have a factory that builds cars, for example, but also the people who work there will actually want to work there of their own volition, and they won't feel like they're getting the short end of the stick? Do we simply divide the profits equally among all the employees? Because if there is no masonry to determine the course of things, then everyone can have a car factory. And if everyone can have a car factory, who is going to operate them? And one person could not operate the whole thing alone. Speak to any conservative who worships capitalism, and you'll see the smugness and egotism as they tell you that entrepreneurs are something akin to above mere mortals, and that the workers are invariably dumb people who cannot match the great accomplishments of the entrepreneur, and therefore should be grateful for their place as workers. So just like a Bolshevik tribe member, a capitalist tribe member relies upon the existence of dumbed-down masses in order to accomplish his dreams. Dumbed-down masses are actually the most important commodity in the capitalist world, and it's also the most plentiful. Doesn't that make you see that committing crimes against humanity to ensure an endless stream of stupid people would actually be a very profitable thing? Capitalism inherently requires a two-caste system. If everyone was a genius, if everyone was inventive and creative, no one would work for anyone else. And almost every capitalist dream cannot be accomplished without workers. One person couldn't even build a modern house because he and he alone would have to make the concrete, cut down the trees and process them into framing boards, manufacture the roof tiles from raw materials, and so forth. In true capitalism that is not molded by a tyrannical government, you would not have industry, because no one would want to work. Everyone would be the boss, and no one would be the employee. And life would once resemble village life out of the 15th century, because alone a person can build a rudimentary shelter, and grow a rudimentary garden, and make only rudimentary tools and clothing. So what's the solution? Well, there is two options. Either we go back to a rudimentary, primitive way of living with total unrestrained capitalism, or if we want to maintain industry, the workers form into gangs and start raiding houses like this, and through criminal acts strip the wealth of these entrepreneurs. Ask yourself, why should you be grateful for being given a job? There is no reason to be grateful whatsoever. For example, you go into a resort and you get hired to clean the rooms. But couldn't you also dream up and build your own resort, and be the owner of it, and be a millionaire? You can be like the tribe member at the top as well. But you're not allowed, because you're not a Masonic tribe member. No one's gonna fund your resort. No one is going to advertise it to attract customers. And so you have no choice but to work a menial job instead. Every single white worker could dream up and build their own hotel. But then, who would work to run the place? You see the problem? So, what is there to be grateful for? Why should we kiss the asses of these entrepreneurs or respect and admire their wealth, and not instead do what one of my videos has earlier suggested? A good example of what I'm talking about has occurred on YouTube. Thousands upon thousands of kids wanted to be like T. Martin and provide the same service that he provides. T. Martin is a Bavarian Illuminati Masonic individual, and that is why he is able to become a millionaire doing what he does. But think about it, if 1,000,000 kids are providing the same service, who is going to watch each of their channels enough for them all to become millionaires? You see how unrestrained capitalism would actually collapse, either from redundant oversupply or the lack of menial laborers. That's why it's important for these tribal secret societies to ensure the existence of monopolies, which means the American dream will remain only a dream for the Goyim and nothing more.